Ford just recalled nearly 13 million vehicles and then turned around and won an award for quality. Both of those things happened at the same time, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how that's even possible, what it tells us about what's really happening inside Dearborn, and why every person who owns or is considering a Ford truck or SUV needs to pay attention. The federal government responded with one of the largest safety penalties in automotive history, and the real explanation for why all of this happened at once turns out to be stranger than the headlines suggest. When you lay the full picture out, the scale of Ford's recall crisis starts to feel almost unreal. 153 safety recalls covering nearly 13 million vehicles, and Ford only sells about 4 million vehicles a year globally. That recall volume spans more than 3 full years of production. Not 3 years of one model, but 3 years of everything rolling off every Ford assembly line. The defect list reads like a catalog of everything that can go wrong with a modern vehicle. Rear-view cameras going dark, fuel injectors failing, park assist and transmission park systems refusing to work correctly, and software bugs buried in trailer brake controller modules that surface without warning. Towing, parking, reversing, and just plain driving all have a recall campaign attached to them now. Every major nameplate landed on the list, from the F-150 to the Bronco Sport, the Explorer, the Mustang Mach-E, the Edge, and the Escape. Ford's entire core lineup got swept up in this, which meant the financial damage was about to get ugly. Ford's warranty costs climbed from $4.78 billion to $5.83 billion, an increase of over $1 billion in a period when the company could least afford it. Every dollar of that went to parts, labor, and dealer hours spent fixing vehicles that left the factory with defects they never should have carried. And that wasn't even the worst of it. NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, slapped Ford with a $165 million consent order. A penalty that size doesn't come from a paperwork mix-up. Federal regulators examined Ford's internal safety processes and found serious, systemic failures, not a one-time slip, but a pattern of gaps that repeated across the organization. When you stack $165 million in penalties on top of nearly $6 billion in warranty repairs, the picture becomes clear. Ford is bleeding money in every direction at once, and the reason it got this bad traces back to a decision the company made years ago. What most people miss about this crisis is that Ford didn't suddenly forget how to build vehicles. What actually happened was slower, quieter, and in a lot of ways more dangerous than that. Over the past several years, Ford pushed hard to expand its product lineup. The Bronco came back. The Mustang Mach-E launched. The F-150 Lightning brought electrification to the best-selling truck in America. Across every single model, electric or gas, the company loaded in more software, more sensors, and more connected technology than Ford had ever attempted in its history. Each one of those systems created a new potential failure point, and Ford's quality control infrastructure never scaled at the same speed as the engineering ambition. Vehicles grew more complex, faster than the systems built to catch defects could keep up. Then came the supplier problem, which made everything worse. Several of the largest recall campaigns trace back not to parts Ford designed in-house, but to components sourced from an outside global network of Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers. Fuel injector failures and certain electronic module defects fell into that category. When a supplier ships a defective fuel injector to Dearborn, it's not the supplier's name printed on the recall notice that shows up in your mailbox. Ford's logo sits on that letter, and Ford takes the hit. But there's a third piece to this puzzle, and it's the one that triggered the massive NHTSA consent order. What comes next is where the story turns uncomfortable. A $165 million consent order carries a message baked right into the number. NHTSA doesn't hand down a penalty that large because a company stumbled once. That figure tells you regulators concluded Ford moved too slowly, in at least some cases, to take warranty data showing a known problem and turn it into a formal recall campaign. Put plainly, questions exist about whether Ford's own internal data flagged defect signals before the company acted on them publicly. CEO Jim Farley has acknowledged the quality problems openly and pushed back on that framing with an argument that's actually worth hearing. His position is that the high recall volume partly reflects Ford being more proactive now, catching issues and disclosing them faster instead of letting warranty complaints pile up quietly in a database. There's real logic in that defense. A company that recalls vehicles quickly after spotting a defect is doing exactly what consumers and regulators want. Transparency counts for something, and Farley deserves credit for not hiding behind corporate spin on this one. The problem is that 153 recalls in a single year breaks that explanation apart. "We're just being more transparent" works when the number is 20 or 30. At 153, the volume itself proves the problems aren't just being found faster. They're actually there, in large numbers, spread across the entire lineup. And that reality brings us to the single strangest chapter of this whole saga. Ford won the 2026 J.D. Power Initial Quality Study, one of the most respected benchmarks in the entire auto industry. J.D. Power measures problems reported by brand-new vehicle owners within their first 90 days of ownership, and Ford beat every competitor in America. Let that settle for a second. The company carrying 153 recalls and nearly $6 billion in warranty costs just earned the top spot for building the highest quality new vehicles on the market. Understanding how both things can be true at once requires looking at what each metric actually captures. The J.D. Power study is a 90-day snapshot. It tells you how a vehicle feels when it's fresh off the lot, whether the infotainment works properly, whether the power seats adjust the way they should, whether anything rattles or squeaks during that honeymoon period. Ford has gotten very good at nailing that first impression. Recalls, on the other hand, target problems that surface later, after thousands of miles, after heat cycles and road salt and heavy towing loads, after software updates collide with hardware in ways nobody anticipated during development. A truck can feel flawless on day one and still carry a fuel injector design destined to fail at 30,000 miles. That gap between the 90-day experience and the 3-year reality is the key to decoding Ford's entire quality crisis. Assembly line workers aren't the problem here. Engineering decisions, supplier components, and long-term durability are. The kind of failures a short-term survey will never catch, but that explode across recall databases 2 and 3 years down the road. And that raises the real question at the center of all of this. If Ford can build a truck that feels great on day one, why can't they build one that stays great? And what would it actually take to close that gap? Jim Farley knows the answer to that question is years, not months, and he's been open about what Ford is changing. Investments in better defect detection, tighter accountability standards for suppliers, and restructured internal quality processes are all underway, designed to make sure warning signs in warranty data get escalated immediately instead of sitting untouched in a system. Ford has also reshuffled parts of its engineering and quality management teams to hand quality personnel more authority, including the power to flag problems and halt production before vehicles ship to dealers. That kind of structural change represents a real cultural shift for a company that has historically treated production targets and launch deadlines as the top priority above nearly everything else. What the history of this industry tells us about quality turnarounds, though, is the part nobody wants to hear. They take years, sometimes close to a decade. Toyota lived through its own massive recall crisis around 2009 and 2010, when unintended acceleration problems shook the company's reputation to its foundation. The response was a ground-up overhaul of Toyota's entire quality system, but real improvement, the kind both consumers and the data could confirm, took the better part of 10 years to fully materialize. Ford is chasing that same kind of recovery. The J.D. Power win suggests the new vehicle experience is trending in the right direction. The recall numbers tell a different story, one where deeper problems in engineering and supplier quality remain unsolved. And for the millions of people currently driving a Ford, the company's turnaround timeline doesn't change what's parked in their driveway today. Practical reality for anyone driving a Ford built in the last several years comes down to a few things worth knowing. Dealers are required by federal law to perform every recall repair at zero cost to the owner. That protection is absolute. But the inconvenience stacks up fast, from scheduling service appointments to waiting on back-ordered parts to driving a vehicle with a known defect until the fix becomes available at your local dealer. The smartest move, and it takes about 2 minutes, is checking NHTSA's online recall lookup tool. Punching in your VIN pulls up every open recall campaign tied to your specific vehicle, and doing this regularly matters right now because new Ford campaigns keep landing. A vehicle that showed clean last month might carry an open recall today. For anyone shopping for a new Ford, the picture gets genuinely complicated. The vehicles remain competitive, and the F-150 still holds the title of best-selling vehicle in America for a reason. The Bronco brought real energy back to the brand, and when Ford nails a product, they nail it. But trust erodes slowly, and every recall notice that arrives in a customer's mailbox chips away at the relationship a little more. A historic $165 million consent order arrived from federal regulators. And right alongside all of that, a J.D. Power trophy that says Ford's brand new vehicles are the best in the business. That contradiction captures the entire Ford story in 2025 and 2026, a company getting measurably better at some things while still failing at others. Nobody questions whether Ford can build a great truck on a good day, because they obviously can. The question is whether they can do it every day, on every line, with every supplier, at the scale of 4 million vehicles a year. Farley is trying to fix exactly that, and right now, by every measure that extends past 90 days, the results aren't there yet. NHTSA is watching Ford more closely than they have in years, and if the recall volume doesn't drop, not because problems are being caught faster, but because there are genuinely fewer problems to catch, pressure from Washington is only going to grow. This story has a long way to go before it's finished. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you want to stay ahead of it, because the next chapter of Ford's quality crisis could drop any week.